Hey guys, Larsen here, and in today's video we're gonna talk about something that might seem controversial to people, but I'll try my best to explain it. I think that the Warhammer is the best, if not one of the absolute best weapons for leveling. But you also have to understand a few things before you can get to the same conclusion. Some of those things is if you click the abilities on the left side of the mastery tree, you're good. Those skills are actually good. They deal a lot of damage. If you click any of the skills on the right side, it's bad. If you ever try to go into a 1v1 duel with the Warhammer, it's bad. It's absolutely terrible. If I face a player in a 1v1 and he uses a Warhammer, he will not be able to land a single attack on me. And all the CC on the right side are mostly sleeps, and sleeps get interrupted as soon as some other people hits them. So even in group play and you land a sleep in people, it's useless because if they hit them, it goes out. I don't think the right side tree on the hammer is good or useful at all. I think it's bad for PvE and PvP. Well, yeah, the right side tree is bad for PvE and PvP. The only scenario the hammer is good in is here, where you click all the left side skills and you use it in a PvE scenario. And then it becomes one of the best weapons in the game for PvE. And to understand why, we are gonna go to wellforged.gg, a website that has a good image of showing monster types in the game. If we start by looking at ancients, it is weak to the Warhammer, but it resists slash and fire. A slash is a straight sword, it's a hatchet, it's a great axe, and so if you use, pretty much any other melee weapon than the Warhammer, it's not going to be that good. And also if you're a fire mage, the fire staff is really bad against them. But the Warhammer is good against ancients and also lost. And to understand just how many lost enemies there is in the game, it's all undead enemies. That will mean anything there's at a farm, anything there's a pirate, anything there's in a graveyard. And if you look at the 4 starter zones, they're pretty much full of farms and full of pirates. If you look at the next couple of zones, let's say Cutlass and Brightwood, they're also full of lost enemies. If you go to Weavers, it's full of lost enemies. If you go to Restless Shore, it's pretty much only lost enemies too. In the early stages of leveling, there's pretty much just lost enemies everywhere. So the Warhammer is extremely powerful against, I would say, probably 70% of all the enemies you meet in PvE, especially while you're leveling up. And now we're gonna look at the last 2 remaining types. Is Angry Earth, which is weak to slash, which will mean the Great Axe is gonna be handy here. And I like to run my Great Axe with an Arcane Gem, so the Great Axe is gonna be good against both Corrupted and Angry Earth, and the Warhammer is gonna be good against everything else. Those are the reasons why I think Warhammer plus Great Axe is amazing. If you hate the Great Axe and you want to like swap it out with a hatchet, that's fine. But I like the Great Axe. Now we're gonna go into to the build a little bit here. Like I said, you go pretty much full on the left side. I think this is absolutely useless because you don't really want to open up with an ability. If you use a melee weapon, then you're playing pretty bad. For the most part, I just took one and outnumbered. But we're gonna start by taking 1 point in each ability. Then we're gonna get Empower and Heavy Attack, and then we're gonna get Grit and Heavy Attack. I do want to note that the Grit on the hammer feels pretty bad, but I still take it. If it helps, it helps. If you guys don't know what Grit is, it's written nicely in the description. Grit is an added stagger resistance that stops attacks from being interrupted by reactions. And I should also shout out this website. We're using New World Database. I think it's my favorite website for just about any data that you need. It's awesome, so check that out. I'll leave a link to both Wellforge and New World Database in the description down below. And then after we take these 5 skill points, I just rush down here and get the Mighty Gravel ×2 and then click all the passives. Now I want to showcase why this site is good and why this site is bad for PvE. This skill gets 140% increased weapon damage, 160% increased weapon damage, 120% increased weapon damage, and a lot of these passives here also give increased weapon damage. If you look at this, it's 80% weapon damage, so it does less damage than an auto attack. clear out only 115% weapon damage. And one thing to note with this skill, it spreads out enemies, like it's like a swing in a big arc, and it spreads enemies out and it just makes it harder to kill the enemies. So I feel like if anybody uses this skill in a PvE scenario, they lose damage and they're griefing their entire party. And this ability does 110%. So I think that this entire side here is just bad. You don't ever want to use it in PvE. It does no damage and you're griefing yourself and your team if you use the clear out ability. That's my opinion. We're gonna move on to the Great Axe now. I think the early points here, I see a lot of people don't point this out, but I think this is very, very crucial. I like to go Maelstrom first, and then get Enduring Strike second, which gives crit and heavy attacks. And the crit on the heavy attack on the Great Axe is a lot better than on the Warhammer. It actually starts giving the crit immunity relatively early into the attack. And it feels good to use. You don't get interrupted so much when you're trying to attack the enemies if you're channeling heavy attacks. Right. Maelstrom, we get the crit because I think that's super important. We skill Reap, we skill Charge. And then I like to try and max out Reap straight away. Because after you get the pull, you get a second attack. So it basically does Reap. Reap does double damage when you get that one. And then after Reap, I go for some of the lifesteal abilities that can sustain some of your life. And then just finish out the passives. I do want to point that as soon as I have Bloodlust, I respec my Great Axe. And then I take Flawless Resolve, I take Enduring Strike, and then I max out Crowded Well. And this will be my tree, like at the level 20 mastery points. It's not like the best for a war setup, but this is what my Great Axe is going to look like as I'm leveling. That's exactly how I'm going to choose my points. And I think the order is very important. That you get Enduring Strike super early. And once you have Bloodlust, you can get rid of Maelstrom and you can supplement it with the Gravity Well. I'll just put up some footage now. Some of the gameplay, let's fast forward a few seconds. It's going to be a lot, I like to go and charge a heavy attack, then use an ability, dodge backward, charge a heavy attack, and right as you finish your heavy attacks, you use an, well, as soon as you finish any attack with melee weapons, you use an ability. And then it'll like cancel out the animation and you'll guaranteed get the ability off. It almost like if you use an ability there, like the charge as soon as the number goes in, you almost get grid immunity and the abilities will always go off. If you wait for the attack animation to be over to use an ability, it's gonna feel a lot worse. And you're gonna get staggered a lot, especially against the corrupted enemies that pretty much most of their attacks are staggering. So let me just try and rephrase this. I like to do an attack as the damage number pops up and before the animation is over, I use an ability. And if you're doing big pulls, you can dodge backwards, charge up a new attack, make sure the grid immunity pops in from the mastery. And as soon as the attack is over and you see the damage number pop up on your screen, you can then use an ability. So heavy attack, ability, dodge backwards, heavy attack. Now I get staggered here, so I roll back again, but you get the idea, right? We want to utilize that we can get our abilities up and try and get the best out of the grid immunity so we don't get interrupted. And that's how I play melee. That's how I level up my abilities. I hope that you understand that the hammer is only good for player versus environment and it's terrible in PvP. And I think that's all you need to know. That's the best way I can explain why I use my weapon choices. I suppose at the end I can add that the reason I will be adding a hatchet on later on. Basically I will have a hatchet in slot 2 and I will have the Great Axe or the Warhammer in slot 1 and I'll alternate between the slot 1 weapons. So I'll open up my inventory and change the weapons. Is after level 30 I start getting a lot of constitution and then it takes a long time to heal. But before level 30 I only put all my attributes into strength. And then it's easy to heal with just potions or lower tier food. But I will only skill 4 skills into the hatchet. And it's going to be, well, I say 4 skills. You need 3 weapon masteries to get the heal on the berserk. And then I'll use the hatchet as a stat stick and a heal when I'm not in combat. And the reason why I like the Great Axe over the hatchet is when you skill up strength, you just do a lot more damage with the Great Axe. The hatchet is, I think it's primary dexterity and the second stat is strength. So you don't get the full attribute scaling of strength in the hatchet. I'm not gonna say it's bad, I just think I do more damage with the Great Axe and I don't know, I like playing with it. So that's my reasoning for my weapon choices. I I hope you guys, you know, learned a thing or two, got some inspiration. You don't always have to copy other players, but maybe it'll give you a general idea of what these two weapons is going to look like in actual combat. If you like this video, please leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscription if you want to see more videos in the future. Thank you guys, and I hope you have a amazing release here coming up in 2 days. Bye bye.